This week's podcast is sponsored by our friends at Audible. Listening to Audible is a great way to experience a story and make the mundane moments of your day, like driving, commuting or exercising, more interesting. Sign up for a 30-day trial and your first audiobook is free. This week they're recommending the Audible original X-Files Stolen Lives, a compelling new X-Files dramatisation narrated by David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. Sign up for your 30-day trial at audible.co.uk/AVF. Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 23rd of October, and joining me on this edition after a 2-week break is assistant editor Steve Withers.
We don't have horses, just dogs, cats and birds.
And audio reviewer Ed Selley.
Yeah, at base we've got Xena, Jackie Chan and Robin Hood.
Good. We don't have any marks though. Obviously a 2-week break wasn't enough for them because both of them have withdrawn from the podcast this morning. No marks. You just have to put up with the three of us. And at least Ed's on the mend.
Yes, thank you. And also I would say thank you to the couple of people who've PM'd me on the forums asking how I'm getting on. We are now... I had the pins, the screws removed at the end of September, so I missed that last podcast. And it's been a bit up and down. I mean, I walked comfortably out of the hospital, and I thought, this is going to be easy. And within about 72 hours after that, I was much sorer than I'd been, I think, since I'd broken it. Coincidentally, I did have to move those Tannoy Legacy Eatons that I did the review on. I had to move them around, shoot them and put them back in their boxes, which I don't think was exactly what they had in mind for physiotherapy afterwards. But things are doing a lot better now. I generally exist without taking any additional medication. I'm walking around, doing my exercises. So Phil and Steve's dreams of me being used as a sort of disability come logistics cheat at Vegas, possibly disappointingly for them, that's not going to work. But I'm pleased to say that I'm more confident than I was 2 weeks ago that I'm going to be a normal functioning human being. So good. Yes, all good.
Good.
Well, as normal as you were before.
Well, no. I have made lifestyle changes as well.
You know, you finally come out of the closet.
I didn't need to come out there. When I was at university, I was purchased a mug which simply says 80% straight, 20% gay, and I've kept it to this day. I stand by that. No. I have. I mean, obviously, compared to Phil's mighty health kick, I'm nowhere near that. But I am not drinking in the week. I have sort of studied what normal other human beings eat in terms of portions, and I've gone, I appear to eat twice that. So I've sort of, reined back in, and I'm obviously doing movements and exercises to get the ankle back together. So, I don't want to pretend for a second that I'm a Puritan or I've made anything like the unbelievable set of lifestyle changes that Phil has. But when we do our Standing Around in the Desert podcast, you might be able to see more of the desert behind me this time. So we'll see how we go.
Can I make a request, Ed, that you please get back on the source when we're in Vegas, just for mine and Phil's sanity?
Well, we'll see how we go. I mean, it would appear that
he's on the meths this morning, Steve. I don't know if you have that.
The Americans aren't terribly good at alcohol-free beer, so there is an element that I might have to improvise, or maybe have that stuff that I found in the petrol station. The beer mixed with tomato juice.
Oh, that was disgusting.
Because that was healthy-ish or something. So yeah, well, we'll see how we go. But no, as I say, it's been quite beneficial. You've got to try and find the silver linings to your clouds. It's prompted a small series of changes to my behaviour, which I think are probably long-term beneficial.
It's getting a dangerous time of the year as well, Ed. So this is where you really need to knuckle down and stick to your lifestyle changes, because the first thing you want to do when you have strange days like we did the other day where everything turned red because of the sand in the air and all the rest of it, and it seemed like the sun had forgot to boot up that morning, that's when you start thinking about comfort food, like your mashed tatties and your mince and doughboys.
Yeah,
your comfort food.
I've been all right at things like that, mainly because I just, unless I physically go out and buy them, it's only what I have brought into the house. So that's all right. I mean, if I'm in, when in doubt, because as you know, I drink black coffee, which is basically a 0-calorie thing. If I need to consume something, I'll just go for black coffee. I mean, admittedly, after you have 9 of them, I start to be able to smell time and stuff like that. But that's a side effect. I'm not gaining weight whilst I do it.
Yeah, right. I think we need to move on, and it has been quiet on the celebrity death front for a few months, but unfortunately, we did lose. I'd forgotten about him, and I think this is true of a lot of people, because I think comedians are in the limelight for a very short time, and then they move on to other things like writing or producing and so on. And I'd actually forgotten about Sean Hughes, and I will admit, when I first heard the news coming through, for some reason I thought of Sean Locke. I don't know why, but he was the one that popped in my head, and I thought, no, Sean Hughes is the Irish comedian from the 90s. And me and Steve were having a little discussion about this the other day, and of course, Sean Hughes was cutting edge back in the early 90s. There was him, there was Phil Dupuis, Mark Lamar on Nevermind the Buzzcocks, which at that point in time was an absolutely superb panel show. I think a lot of panel shows that have followed since then have basically tried to capture that lightning in a bottle again. And there was other people around at that time. I'm thinking like Richard Herring, Stuart Lee, who else? Jack D, Steve Punt, Hugh Dennis. Hugh Dennis is still going around, Mock the Week, and doing a lot of voiceover work and that kind of thing. But you also had Rob Newman, David Baddiel. David Baddiel's still doing bits and pieces. And Frank Skinner doing Room 101. But a lot of those names have disappeared from the limelight, have kind of moved on. Who's the other one? I said Stuart Lee, sorry.
I said Stuart Lee. Eddie Izzard was big in the 90s.
Eddie Izzard, that was the other one.
Stuart Lee is unusual in so much as he is one of the very few people of this clutch of comedians still, sort of out there as a stand-up comic. Yeah, I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, a lot of these people are extremely busy. I mean, only night before, you feel free to judge me, I was tucking into the new series of Landscape Artist of the Year on Sky Arts, and that, of course, is presented by Frank Skinner, and a very fine job he does too, but he's not exactly on the bleeding edge of comedy anymore.
No, he's not.
Sort of settled into household name status.
Yeah, and of course, Sean Hughes was the same ilk. I mean, he wrote a lot, he did some film work, but again, he'd fallen out of the public limelight quite a bit. But that happens when you're a comedian. It's same for pop stars. You have a bright shining light for maybe a short period of time, and then people forget about you and you disappear, and you've had your career and you've had your success, and that's the same with comedians. But I was shocked because he's only 51, Steve, so almost the same age as you. Don't know why I'm saying that.
No, there's been a lot of deaths recently around the 50s mark, and it is a bit disconcerting for me. I got to say that those 90s comedians were definitely a group that, at the time, it was referred to as comedy was the new rock and roll, because they started playing larger venues. I know that Newman and Baddiel played Wembley Arena, for example, which has become the norm now, isn't it? Now comedians do quite big comedy tours, and they do play big venues. Some of them, are packing out the O2 and that sort of stuff on a regular basis. So they were kind of trend-setting in the sense of going from small clubs to large venues. Although Newman, not so much now.
Although I did see Richard Herring and Stuart Lee at the Sands Centre in Carlisle. I think there was about 15 of us there, and there was an older couple sitting in front of us who didn't come back for the second half.
I can imagine. I saw Rob Newman and David Baddiel played Wembley Arena, like I said. I saw Rob Newman last year, actually, in a 200-seat, maybe 100-seat venue in Bath. So his audience has got a lot more selective these days. I saw Frank Skinner the week. It was his very first gig in his UK tour, 1997. It was when I was living in Jersey. So it was his first gig in Jersey. He actually mentions it in his biography because he opened up his tour the week Princess Diana died. So he actually mentions it at the beginning of his show, like, I can't believe I started a UK, nationwide comedy tour during National Mourning Week. I'm not going to do any jokes about her, but not good timing, as it turns out. He was really funny.
Yeah. So getting back to Sean Hughes, it is sad that he comes from such a big scope of comedians at the time. I mean, Ed, you're maybe a little bit young for this lot.
Well, not exactly. I mean, I went to see, because it was over the road from where my halls of residence were in my first year of university. I went to see 2 episodes being filmed. Sorry,
Buzzcocks or
Buzzcocks. And on one occasion, I did speak briefly to Sean Hughes. He seemed nice enough, but it's a weird one. There's actually a very, very interesting piece was published in the Guardian yesterday. And it would appear, I have to say, it makes for uncomfortable reading, because I'm thinking, I read it thinking, God, I need to be nicer to people whilst I'm alive, because they might do this to me when I'm dead. Point makes for uncomfortable reading. I mean, Hughes has, it appears, for quite a long time has been battling demons. I don't mean that just in the sense that he drank quite a lot, which was sort of instrumental in his death, but he sort of unhappy with being the face of Buzzcocks and the sort of domestic acceptability that came with that, versus his desire to be an artist and a poet, but then at the same time coveting the income and the fame that it made, and so on and so forth, and a very unbalanced existence. And it does make for very, very interesting reading. It would appear that essentially once you've been the young firebrand, you can't stay as the young firebrand, and that appears to have been a problem that he's sort of dealt with pretty much from the outset of his career, winning the Perrier Award at that time, the youngest comic ever to do so, and essentially from there the only way is down. But it is a shame. I mean, he's been busier than you might think in the last couple of years, it would appear, just sort of tinkering around behind the scenes. But yes, he's sort of disappeared, I think, through his own choice, out of the limelight to the extent that he was in it.
Yeah, it is sad, but we're going to have to move on now. But it's one of these things where he was certainly around as I was growing up, as I was a teenager, and like we say, with all the other comedians there, they were quite a force to be reckoned with, because I'm thinking about comedians nowadays, and there's not many who are still working who I would actually go and see, Steve.
No, there aren't really. I've seen a couple. I know you've seen a few as well, but I don't know. Has comedy lost its edge a bit? I mean, there's still a few. Frankie Boyle certainly knows how to wind people up.
I've seen Frankie Boyle live, and that is an experience. Absolutely.
But back in the 90s, there was definitely a lot of edgy comedy, a lot more politicised, I think, maybe. Maybe that was more the 80s, but definitely, I haven't seen too many live comedy. Actually, the last thing I saw that was a live comedian was Jonathan Pye, who does this stuff on YouTube as a reporter. And he is really funny, savage, and but bang on the money.
Yeah.
He's still very edgy, and I think pushes the envelope a bit. But yeah, a lot of them haven't. I should just mention quickly, Sean Hughes, of course, was also very funny as the A&R man from Egypt Records in The Commitments.
The Commitments, yeah. Yeah, really good. And talking about demons, it's one of the names that we forgot to mention, but talking about somebody who dealt with a lot of demons and who uses it in his acting, you either love him or you hate him. And I've got to say, I sit on the fence with him. But Johnny Vegas, he came through there, and again diversified. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a really good actor. Probably better than he is a comedian, but again, someone who uses his life experiences and so on for his comedy, and can be pretty surreal as well, which Sean Hughes definitely was. If you ever watch Sean's show, I still didn't get that. Anyway,
20 years later,
still trying to get it. I watched. I brought it up on All Four. If you're interested, it is there. The whole series is there. Funnily enough, it was only one season, and there's about 7 episodes. Couldn't understand any of it, and it still as surreal today as it was back then. Current competitions. What can we win, Steve?
Well, we've got quite a lot going on at the moment, so we'll start small and we'll work our way up. But we've got a copy of Transformers: The Last Night on DVD. That competition closes on the 20th of October. We've got a BenQ W1050, which I think you've got in for review. Obviously not this one, but you've got one in for review at the moment, haven't you, Phil?
Yeah, turned up.
Right, excellent. And that's worth £599, and that's available. That competition runs until the 27th of October. And then we've got big one now. You do have to pay to enter this competition, but you could win a £20,000 media room courtesy of Multi-Room Media. and that competition closes on the 30th of October. So 20 grand media room, I got to say, you could do an awful lot with 20 grand, couldn't you, in terms of some really top kit. So that's got to be worth checking out. And also, finally, you can win a Focal Sib Evo 5.1.2 Dolby Atmos speaker package worth over £1,000, courtesy of Seven Oaks, and that competition closes on the 1st of November.
Yeah, 20 grand media room. What would you spend it on, Ed? Turntables. Why am I even asking?
It probably wouldn't involve a television, if that's what you're asking.
It wouldn't be much of a media room though if you didn't. You have to do multimedia. It's got to be a bit of everything for Ed. You can't just buy a turntable and some big speakers and a tube amp.
Well, I for one think that that's an unacceptable violation of what I want to do with a room. I mean, the last review product of the month showed up yesterday. It took some time to put it together. It's another record player. It's one that has been requested a couple of times in the comments. And yeah, to be honest, at the moment that you were saying 20 grand, I was thinking, well, one of those and some of the supporting ancillaries. Job done. Maybe a chair.
It's not really a room though, is it, Ed? Really? So.
Well, it would go in a room, wouldn't it?
Be a very empty room.
Yeah, that's the thing. Are they supplying the room, or do you have to have the room?
It just puts it in a porter cabin.
But anyway, it's a great prize. It's certainly worth entering. So yeah, that's in the competition areas on the forums. Go and click through to that one. Right, previous competition winner, Steve?
There is one. His name is Tiberian9, who won Lethal Weapon Season 1 on Blu-ray.
Okay,
so
good prize
to him.
Yeah, good prize there. Right, so let's move on to hardware news. It's getting to that time of year where we get new projectors through, and funnily enough, we've had 2 new projectors through. I'm currently working on the Sony VW360ES, which is a 4K projector. It's about 7 grand. And Steve, you just finished on the VW260ES, which is the slightly lower down model in the range, but still costs a whopping, is it 5.5 grand?
It's fine. No, it's £5,199. When Sony launched these projectors at IFA back in September, and I got my first look at them, they had 3 new ones. They had the 260, the 360, and also the 760, which is the 15 grand laser 4K projector. And the big point they were trying to make was they were trying to move into a more affordable price bracket. And I think by affordable, what they meant was sub £5,000. They wanted to get 4K projection, native 4K projection below £5,000. And they were talking about, a list price of 5 grand or 4,999 basically. They were talking in euros at the show. And so I'd assume they were aiming for a £4,999,000 price point for this projector for the 260, and therefore get it just below the 5 grand psychological barrier. It doesn't seem to have quite worked, because once the distributors get their oar in, it's actually going to be £5,199, but it's still by far and away the cheapest native 4K projector that's been available so far, because the previous generation, the 550 that you reviewed, was originally 8,999 when it was launched, I believe, or 8,699. It's now nearer 10 grand. It's gone up in price since launch, which is very unusual.
Brexit.
Yes, I'm guessing that must be the Brexit effect. And the one you've got, the 360, is 6,999, isn't it?
Yeah, 7 grand. Yeah.
So just over £5,000. It is expensive, but certainly the cheapest native 4K projector so far. But native resolution is not everything, and I think that's something we've made quite clear on other podcasts. So Sony can't just basically kick back and relax and go, okay, we've got a native 4K projector, therefore you should buy our projector, because as we've said many times, it isn't everything. There are many other factors that are important to a good image, and there's a lot of competition in that price bracket of 5K and below. And then, if you look at what's out there right now, you've got some really cracking projectors from JVC, of course. You've got the 5900, which is, I think, about 3.5 grand or 399. You've got the 7900, which is about 5,700. So both either side.
Or if you're into buying second hand through our classifieds on the forums, don't forget you could get the X5000, which you've got, Steve, and I've got the X7000 is my reference point projector still, and you can pick those up second hand for considerably less as well.
Yep, you absolutely can. And if you're interested in Epson, they're the one you reviewed, Phil, the TW9300.
That's such a cracking value for money. Yeah, absolutely.
£3,000.
And it comes with lens memory and a lens door, an automatic lens door that closes and opens when you power it up and off. You're looking at these 2 projectors, like we're saying, at those price points. They don't have that. And
Yes, no,
the
that's the thing.
260 doesn't even have lens memory on it.
No, they've been cutting corners to get the price point down, but at times it feels a bit mean on a projector that's costing you over £5,000. You haven't got lens memory. It doesn't have a dynamic iris. I mean, they dropped the lens covers the motorized lens cover a long time ago, but it hasn't got that. And when you look at things like the 7900 or the Epson 9300, they have lens memory features. They have motorized lens covers. They have a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily in the Sonys. Like I say, their big selling point is it's native 4K. But when you're sat at a sensible viewing distance, you really can't tell the difference unless you get up close to the screen.
Yeah, and of course
things...
we've done that in the past, and we've done that recently as well. And you did it with this review and put the two projectors side by side. And if I'm assuming you're sitting about 7 feet back, Steve.
It's 7, maybe a little bit more than that, actually. I'm trying to look now. I can see about 8-9 feet from the screen.
Okay, same as me then, 8 or 9 feet from the screen. You've got the same size of screen as me, isn't it? A 10-foot scope.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah.
You can't tell any difference when it comes to resolution. You have to get up and move towards the screen before you can start to see resolution. So the fact that it's native, it's a nice little selling point. But in terms of performance, it doesn't make a huge bit of difference. It's other attributes in the image, like black levels, like shadow detail retrieval, like proper gamma, which I've got to say, I don't know why Sony mess with the gamma, but I've never seen a Sony, even with the editing software that you get separately, I've never seen one perform where it doesn't change the gamma on the fly.
Yeah, it does fiddle around with it a little bit. I mean, as a performer, it's a very good projector. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the 260. It delivers a nice image. It's quite. It was actually, I've got to say, out of the box, not as accurate as I would have liked for something at that price point. Although with projectors, obviously, you do sometimes get variations because of bulbs. But I did run the bulb in before I started testing it. I know, for example, that the 9300 you reviewed and the 7300 were a lot more accurate out of the box than the Sonys were, and the 550 that you reviewed was also very inaccurate out of the box, and that's a £10,000 projector. So I would like to see it more accurate out of the box. However, you can get it very accurate apart from the gamma via calibration, so that is an option. In terms of its performance, like I say, I thought it was a very good projector. The only weak points really were that the black levels weren't great. I mean, I know they've been getting better on Sony projectors. This seems like a bit of a retrograde step in some respects.
I've got to say
the
360. The blacks aren't as good as I thought they were going to be, or should be. Having seen the 550, and obviously living with a JVC, they are a tad lighter, which is a shame. But like I say, Sony do something with the gamma as well, where it does manipulate the gamma behind the scenes as well. So I wish they wouldn't do that, because I'd like to try and dial the image in myself and calibrate it properly. And I don't know why it does it. I mean, obviously the 360 has got the iris there, but I don't use it. I'd much rather set the iris manually, which you can do on the 260.
It's got a manual control, hasn't it?
Yeah.
No, you can't. There's no manual iris control on the 260.
Is there not? All right. So
it's literally just open. That's it.
Right. So you can do that on the 360. So there's the differences between the two. You can set the iris level and so on, but it is a little bit disappointing in terms of the black levels, but in terms of resolution and so on, in terms of colours are really nice. And of course, the 260 and the 360 don't use filter. So the JVCs and the Epsons use a filter, which obviously goes in the light path. It extends the colour volume, but at the same time, it dips brightness down a bit because you're putting the filter in the light path, which the Sonys don't do. So they do keep the brightness. And I've got to say, with HDR, I think the 360 certainly is probably the best HDR projector I've seen yet, in terms of you don't need to do anything to set it up. You just let it run, and it does tone map really well. And although there is the elevated black level, you are getting the highlights there. Obviously, it's not getting anywhere close to what a TV can do in terms of high dynamic range, but you can notice a difference. It does look nice. There is a nice dynamic edge to the image, given the limited brightness it has, and it does tone map, which is the most important thing. So yes, it might mess with the gamma with SDR stuff, but actually the messing about with the gamma when it comes to tone mapping is actually in its favour.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I found that comparisons to the JVC, it's I give the JVC the edge in terms of SDR image quality. but I definitely gave the 260 the edge in terms of HDR performance. I think it's outside of the Z1, it's the best, and I haven't seen that many projectors of late. It's certainly had the better HDR performance for me. Yeah, you're right, Phil. It's never going to compete with the kind of perspective highlights you get with a TV, but as far as projection goes, I think it's a very good performer in terms of HDR, and that's definitely one of the areas where Sony are obviously pushing that quite hard.
Yeah, and when you're in a completely Batcave room, and this is where these two projectors are suited to their best, don't put them in an all-white room, because you're not gonna get the best out of them. But if you are in a pitch black room, like you should be with these machines, the fact that you're getting 300 nits or 300 plus nits when it comes to HDR, that does make a big difference when you're looking at an image in the dark, and it gives it a nice dynamic edge to it. And I've got to say, I've got the X7000 as my reference machine here. It doesn't do HDR very well. It's one of the downsides. So it's been nice to look at HDR material through the 360. It does it really quite well. But again, we're looking at the pricing, and I think the 360, like the 260, is just a little bit toppy when it comes to price, especially given the competition out there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I applaud Sony for trying to get the price point further down, but like we said, it's a competitive marketplace, and resolution isn't everything. And in terms of overall performance, I do think there are better deals out there.
Okay, let's move on. Ed's been looking at some speakers, funnily enough.
Yes, I have. I've been looking at loads of speakers, obviously, as you know, over the last couple of weeks. But the last of the ones to go up, and it went up this morning, Friday, is the KEF Q350. So the larger of two stand mounts in the new KEF Q series range. And obviously the review is up. I won't go into exhaustive detail, but essentially you get many of the things that you've come to expect from KEF, the trademark UniQ driver, where the tweeter's in the middle of the mid bass, and all of the sort of attendant technologies that go with that. And it's in a cabinet which has now been sort of modified to take this into account. It has borrowed some sort of thinking and technology from the LS50 that we looked at a couple of years ago, and the result is a speaker which sounds exceptionally good. I did have some minor issues with its bass response in this room. If you run it without the supplied foam bungs, I felt that there was a slight lack of control in this sort of space. If you do put the foam bungs in, it sort of sorts that out, but it sort of robs it of some of the impact. So it required a bit of fettling to try and get it into the sort of get it running as I wanted. But it doesn't detract from the fact that it was a tremendously entertaining speaker to listen to. The issue that I had, and I've put it in the review, and you can judge for yourself from the photos and other photos doing around it, is that I can't say in any way, shape or form I'm desperately sold on its appearance. I mean, my wife, I choose my words carefully, my wife basically says it looks like a tiny washing machine, and I sort of can't argue with that. I just wasn't, it's so starkly minimalist in the white that it's not my thing. Let's leave it at that. I mean, admittedly, as we know, I'm a 90-year-old trapped in an unfit 36-year-old body. So the Tannoy Legacy Eaton and the Spender S35 Classic that I looked at recently, those are right up my alley. But it's not my thing. Interestingly, they've come back, but this time they're in black. There's a full 5.1.4 pack of KEF Q series speakers here at the moment, and that will in time work through to a review on the site. They do look a lot better in the black as far as I'm concerned, but again, it's just so minimalist that it's a matter of personal taste, and it isn't necessarily to mine. But obviously, we shouldn't just be choosing products with our eyes. We should obviously definitely be choosing them with our ears. And sonically, they are exceptionally good. Hopefully, this is going to be one of a set of reviews. We're looking at some other new arrivals at this price point. There's the Monitor Audio Silver 100s. They're in at the moment, and they'll be going through the review. I've written the review, actually. I need to take photos of them. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll be looking at the new Bowers & Wilkins 700s as well. But these set an exceptionally strong benchmark. They are very, very good. And well and truly capable of working with electronics that are rather more expensive than they are, and showing what those electronics are doing. So performance wise, absolutely fantastic. Looks wise, matter of personal opinion, but they still come out at the end of it with a good review because they are an exceptional sounding loudspeaker.
Is the ventilation all right in your place now? Is the smell of methylated spirits?
We're getting there.
I'm just saying because you're very enthusiastic this morning now, Ed.
Well,
yeah, it's quite surprising.
I got the windows open, but I won't lie, I'm probably high as a kite at the moment. So yeah.
Excellent. Sorry, Ed, did you say you got a 5.1.4 system in then?
Yes.
Is that upward firing drivers?
Yes.
Is this your first Atmos experience?
No.
Okay.
But it's the first Atmos review I've done for you guys. I don't habitually run Atmos in the house. I've got to be honest, I'd rather have 5 excellent speakers than 9 less excellent speakers if my budget was being worked in that direction. But that's separate to what the KEF is doing here. I have to say, their upward firing solution, I've heard it in other locations, and I've been doing some early tinkering with it here, and there's a lot to like. So I think of the options, this is looking like an extremely good one. It's just as less of a committed cinephile than you guys, it's not necessarily always been a price complexity balance that I would be willing to do myself, if that makes sense.
Given your current room.
Definitely given my current room, given the fact that, obviously, put it like this, there is all the cabling in place to permanently wire an Atmos system in, and I am reminded of that every single time that my wife points out, why is there basically what looks like the set of Brazil lurking down the side of the room. So it's one of those things where you'd have to make a value decision based on your own requirements, but that is not to detract from what KEF has done here, which early signs is very impressive.
And of course, if you're doing it properly, the cinema room properly, it's pitch black anyway, so it doesn't matter what the speakers look like. And if you're doing it really right, you hide them behind the screen anyway.
Well, this is also true. I would say that if you are going for the Batcave thing, the black Q series speakers are. This is where KEF's lack of adornment really does start to make some sense. These are genuinely. They are, other than the tweeter, there is no other point of light on these speakers at all. I'm sat here in daylight, and it's basically I've got sort of 5 2001 style obelisk points just absorbing light. They are very dark indeed.
They're warping the space-time continuum as we speak, are they?
No, that's the White Spirit. But the it just obviously I don't know if Phil's going to include anything. Earlier today, a can of paint, which has been stored carelessly behind the downstairs loo, split overnight. So I came down this morning to find a huge puddle of grey paint in the downstairs loo. So I had a massive panic and sort of attacked it with kitchen roll and White Spirit. And there is a lot of White Spirit in the house at the moment. So I'm possibly...
Why is there a lot of White Spirit in your house?
Well, obviously the bottle was open whilst I was trying to get it out of the floor. The floor's got a sort of textured effect, so just trying to get it out.
Sorry, what I meant, Ed, was the way you said that, it sounded like you had a ready supply.
It did, yeah. It sounded like I had a room full of White Spirits.
Well, I was delighted to find that we had most of a 2-litre bottle remaining, or a good night out, as it's otherwise known. Quite relieved, but yeah, I don't for a sec. I suspect I might have to go out for a short walk at the end of this to try and clear my mind.
Right, so we were going to go and talk about the X1000 Ultra HD Blu-ray player from Sony, but it's exactly the same as the X800, so
yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
just twice the price.
Twice the price, and the reviews on the website if you want to read it. So we're going to move on swiftly because I feel we're going to talk about the film that we've all seen, and I did say all of us have seen. I think it'll take a little bit of time. So next is movie news. Okay, so movie news and movie reviews. Like I say, all 3 of us have been out to the cinema. I'm surprised Ed even went on opening day which really surprised me. So we're talking about Blade Runner 2049. This is spoiler-free, this review. We will probably come back to it in our yearly roundup podcast at the end of the year, where we will go into little bits of spoilers and so on. But this will be spoiler-free because if you haven't seen it yet, go and see it. Although I think it is a tad too long, and certainly in the screening that I was in, some people got up and left because they were bored. It is the perfect definition of a slow boiler. Something that really does take its time to tell its story. It doesn't move along with any pace. Sometimes you are ahead of where it is. You've already worked out what's going on, and you're a couple of scenes ahead, and as scenes can last up to an hour. I found myself looking at my watch, if I'm perfectly honest. Where I think this really stands out is in the cinematography, is in the way that it's presented. It's in the way that it feels like a genuine sequel to a film that was out, over 30 years ago. It feels like that time has passed, and we're picking up the story again after that time has passed in this universe. It looks sumptuous. I mean, you could almost eat it. It is fantastic. I mean, Richard Deakins, hands down, probably the best cinematographer working at this moment in time. The whole new Las Vegas area of it, and again, we're not going into spoilers of the film. My jaw was on the floor watching that. It was stunning. And the other flip of the coin, Steve, and something I think that worked really well, was that the original film was set in LA at night with only artificial lighting being used, and it rained constantly, which gave it a really oppressive feel all the way through the film, and that's where it built its tension, whereas this flips it on its head completely and does the complete opposite.
Yeah, it does. It does a very good job of opening out the world, because if you look at the original Blade Runner, obviously it's an incredibly influential film. It looks amazing, but it's clearly been shot on like one big set with two street corners, because you keep seeing, if you look in the background, you can see the White Dragon noodle bar.
Yeah. and you keep seeing the same extras walking past two or three times in the same scene.
It looks amazing, but clearly, they could only do so much in '82. And with modern technology, although a lot of it looks like it was shot on location as well, they've opened it up really impressively, and they've also really thought about how to take the story forward in terms of not just the story in terms of the narrative of the characters, but also the world they inhabit. So there's a whole backstory which isn't really alluded to. There's alluded to in the film, but there's more detail if you go online. There's some short films that have been made that sort of fill in the 30-year period that explains how they got from the world of Blade Runner 2019, 2 years in the future, to the world of 2049. And what they've done is I think they've done a really good job of taking that aesthetic and that general idea and expanding it and building on it and taking it in a different direction, so that it isn't just the same thing. They could have just shot it on neon lit streets in pouring rain, and had the same aesthetic, but that would have been just doing the same thing over again. So I applaud them for trying to do something very different, a very different look. And you're right, Phil. Absolutely, every shot in this film is stunning. The use of color is just incredible in this film. It's going to make an absolutely amazing Ultra HD Blu-ray when it comes out. So that's incredible. The original Blade Runner is not the most. I remember when I saw it. Was I 15 when I saw it at the cinema? And I remember going thinking, "Oh, great, detective hunting down androids. This is going to be great." And Harrison Ford, and then was bored to tears when I saw it the first time. What's all the action? What's going on? Since then, of course, I've grown to love it. It's one of my all-time favorite films. This film, I guess, is a similar film in the sense that it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. You could easily cut half an hour out, and it would be the same film. Its pace is glacial. I mean, I know it's deliberate, but for a modern audience, that can be difficult to take. And that's probably one of the reasons why it hasn't been as big a success as people thought it was going to be, because it's had uniformly good reviews across the board.
It's done well.
Not done that well at the box office.
It's done well in the UK, but everywhere else
better. In the States, which is obviously the main market, it has not done as well as expected. And I think that's partly, I suppose, down to not everyone being that into Blade Runner, and also the pace is slow. It's a very deliberately slow film, but I think maybe a little bit too slow at times.
I think where it'll find its audience is at home. But let's move on to what Ed thought.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I do take on. I don't disagree with most of the comments you've made. I mean, I will say that there are. The more I think about it, the more there are some truly gigantic plot holes. One of which only occurred to me several weeks after I'd watched it, but completely and utterly nullifies the point of the first film. But it is beautiful, and it's a very odd experience because it has some features which are so, as you say, in terms of its pacing, in terms of the way it shoots. You know, that's that classic thing where you're supposed to clap every time a camera angle changes or so on and so forth, and it's a measure of how things are done. And you know, this one you'd be clapping every 2 or 3 minutes. It is a radically different experience to most films that we watch, new films that we watch in 2017, and I thought it was much the better for that. And I will also say, I don't think this is a spoiler. It is, and I think I said this in the thread on the forum, I believe this is the first time in the 21st century where I've gone to see Harrison Ford at the cinema and he was acting and being someone else and not Harrison Ford standing around collecting a substantial paycheck, which I think is, I thought that was quite noteworthy in itself. I for a moment I was taken there. Equally, and again, I don't think this is a spoiler, I think it's absolutely magnificent, the idea that Peugeot, a manufacturer with a reputation perhaps not in terms of cast iron reliability all it could be, not only continues to exist in this dystopian future, but now has been entrusted with making flying cars. I've got to be honest, I'd be reticent about getting into a flying Peugeot.
Obviously, this is a different universe altogether because Atari still exists in this universe.
Yes, and
there's loads of Pan Am still going apparently.
Yeah.
But there are some really nice performances from not just the leads. But there's some nice understated work from a couple of other people in there as well, and it I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will almost certainly buy it in the best media to which I have support for at the time. So that'll be Laserdisc.
I'm still surprised you went to the cinema, Ed. That's still blown me away. And
what
surprised
me is that on release day it just wasn't that busy, and I thought,
it wasn't.
It's not encouraging.
And like I say, people walked out of the screen I was in. So
no one walked out of mine. We're made of sterner stuff down here in Concrete, California. We live in a dystopian future anyway, so we were pretty comfortable with that. Nobody left, to the best of my knowledge. But yeah, given how much it cost, don't get me wrong, eventually, provided that they've budgeted it out over a decade, this one will wash its face.
Yeah. They'll get their money back.
But it's not. I'm delighted it was made, but I don't. Anyone that felt that they were going to be knocking it out the park money wise on this one has backed the wrong horse.
Yeah. The thing is, you can see where the money's been spent. The money's all up. It's all up there. It's on the screen. It looks gorgeous, and we're bigging it up. But it's not perfect. There are some things that are really great with me with this film. Pacing, one of them. The other one is a scene in which Harrison Ford is sat on a chair while an action scene goes on round about him, and he looks like an old man sat in a chair thinking, what the hell is going on here? Again, we're not going to spoil it for people, but that just stuck out like a sore thumb. They could have cut half an hour out, like Steve says, and it would have been a better film. But the thing that really grated for me was the soundtrack. And I'm not talking about the sound mix and the effects and all the rest of it, which was outstanding.
Unbelievably loud.
Yeah. What I'm talking about is the music score. The music score to this was a big disappointment, especially after the original with Vangelis and so on. And there are a few cues back to that, but to me, I think Hans Zimmer needs to close the synthesizer down in the effects synthesizer, because all he makes now is loud noise. It's not music. It's not entertaining. It does nothing for this movie. I think this movie either had to hark back to what had gone before in the previous film, or taken it a different route. To me, it was just a cacophony of loud noises.
Now, you see, I felt in the context of the film, it worked quite well. However, my desire to listen to it as a standalone soundtrack, I'd probably sooner just turn a food processor on in the kitchen. I thought it worked contextually very well, but it's not a great score. It's effective in terms of the context that it was used. I need to state, commit an act of heresy here, state my customer. I can't get that excited about the Vangelis Blade Runner score. I can't get excited about any Vangelis score. I just don't think he's that good. Sorry. So I'm coming at this from a different place. I felt it was effective, but do I feel compelled to even listen to it on a different on a streaming service? No, not in any way, shape, or form. But that, I believe, is the nature of. I think it was deliberately done that way for the film.
I don't know. You just got to look at his output lately, and it's been
Interstellar. It's like an Interstellar score, isn't it? It's just excruciating to listen to. And I just really got on my nerves.
Yeah.
I thought though that there was some really, really good ideas in the film. I'm not going to go into details, so I don't want to ruin anything, but I love the relationship between the lead protagonist and his girlfriend. And it isn't just because his girlfriend was as fit as a butcher's dog, but also because the whole concept
she looked familiar to me, like she was from
she's
another universe.
She was in War Dogs.
Is in a lot of films, yeah.
And if you haven't seen Knock Knock, for the love of God, watch it, because she's in that and it's worth seeing.
Oh dear, dirty old Men O'Clock.
I didn't really get Jared Leto's character. He seemed like he was in a different film a lot of the time. But overall, I enjoyed it. I just felt it wasn't the masterpiece that some people are claiming it is.
No, and I've seen some strange things about how women are portrayed in this film, which I don't get it at all. I think this whole Weinstein thing's just gone a little bit too far, and people are looking at how females are being portrayed in movies, and for some reason this has gotten a lot of flack. And again, to go into that conversation any further would spoil certain bits of this film for people. So, but yes, I've been reading some stuff at the minute. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and it's no, absolutely not. Right, anyway, we need to move on. But if you got the chance to go and see it, go see it. I've just found out this week that my Odeon is showing it in IMAX 2D as well as 3D. I am going to go and see it in 2D IMAX next week. Absolutely going to go and see it again, because I think looks wise, I mean the original screening I saw, I don't know what you saw it in, Ed, but I saw it 2D at 240:1.
Yeah,
3D IMAX for me.
3D IMAX, okay.
It was alright.
Ed, how did that look? Because the film, a lot of it's dark and dingy. It must have been difficult to see what's going on in 3D.
I didn't. Now you see, all this came out afterwards. That the people that did it said, "Don't watch it." 3D. To be honest, it was. I didn't choose to do it that way. My friend, it's the cinema closer to him. I didn't mind it. It wasn't. None of it sort of looked wrong, and I felt that the low light stuff still worked reasonably well, if I'm honest. So, I mean, to be fair, it's a very new IMAX, and it's probably sticking out a billion nits, which probably helps.
It has to do that. That is one of the good things about IMAX screenings, is that IMAX completely control it. So cinemas can't turn the projectors down and that kind of thing. IMAX absolutely control it, and if you do anything like that, you lose your license to show IMAX stuff. So in terms of quality and in terms of light output and all the rest of it, if you got an IMAX screening, you are seeing it in the best that's capable in that cinema, which is a plus point.
Yes, no question. So I mean, I thought it looked fine. I will be interested to watch it in 2D as and when. I mean, I'm once again, I'm just barely turning my television on for any purpose at the moment. So I'm in the wrong frame of mind.
Yeah, I've got.
Sorry, I just had to sneeze.
Yeah, I've got a good recommendation for you in terms of TV. But anyway, we're going to find out what's coming out this week. I have no interest in this whatsoever. I just don't understand the universe. What is it?
Well, it actually, the film opening it's not this Friday. It opens on Tuesday, 24th of October, so it opens early. But it's Thor Ragnarok, so the third Thor film after Thor and Thor: The Dark World. And this has been directed by a New Zealand director who has done some really interesting films recently. If you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows or Hunt for the Wilder People, then I recommend both of them highly, because they're really, really good films and very funny. And clearly he's brought that his humor, his trademark humor, to this film. So although I haven't seen it yet, I am seeing it on Tuesday. I know some early reviews have said that it's one of the funniest of the Marvel movies. So I think it's got more of a Guardians of the Galaxy tone to it, more reverent, more jokes. Obviously, it's set in space. It's more sci-fi than previous, certainly previous Thor movies. But Thor has always had an element of sci-fi to it because he's not necessarily actually a god, but just another alien species who were worshipped as gods by the Norsemen. So there's that element to it. But I like the idea of him with the Hulk in space. The cast is amazing. You've got not just Chris Hemsworth returning, and obviously what's his name? Got his name.
Yeah, the cast really is amazing, Steve.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
So memorable.
Who's
Gruffalo, isn't it?
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. Thank you, Mark Ruffalo.
That's why I always make it rhyme with the Gruffalo, and I don't think that's right.
Yes, Mark Ruffalo, who's returning as Bruce Banner and the Hulk, and also Cate Blanchett, who's the lead villain, and she's always quality. So yeah, it's got an interesting cast. It looks amazing in the trailers. It seems funny, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I'm more invested in the Marvel universe than you are, Phil. So that might be the reason.
Right, so that's coming up this week. Like Steve says, it's an early release on a Tuesday. Blu-ray releases this week. Not
a massive amount this week, actually. We've got The Mummy, which arrives on both Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray.
Pass.
Yeah, I actually watched it last night on Ultra HD Blu-ray. And I've got to say, a bit disappointing. Not the best picture I've seen. And surprisingly, even though it had Dolby Atmos, it wasn't a particularly immersive soundtrack either. Even the bit when they were in 0G in the plane was disappointing in terms of its immersion. So yeah, probably one to pass. Also, second season of Ash versus the Evil Dead, which is the Starz TV series that they've been doing with Bruce Campbell back as Ash fighting Deadites. And also, in terms of it's not a Blu-ray release, and it came out a couple of weeks ago as a special edition, a collector's edition, limited edition package. But I believe the basic 2-disc package of Close Encounters will be coming out this week as well on 4K, which is definitely worth getting if you haven't already bought it.
Looks stunning, absolutely stunning. Film grain and everything.
Yes.
As it's supposed to be seen, people. Film grain exists. Get used to it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's funny how people. I understand if you've grown up watching digital productions and playing video games, film grain might be annoying to you, but it's just a natural part of the photochemical process. In fact, it's so much a part of what film is supposed to look like that directors will add fake grain to digitally shot movies to make it look more film-like. So
yeah, the
artistic choice.
Best example I've seen of that was Social Network, because that was shot on Red cameras and. In post, they added it back in, the grain back in. It actually looks like it was shot on film, to be honest.
Shot on film,
yeah. Right, so yeah, that's Close Encounters. Any other UHD Blu-ray update news?
In terms of announcements, it looks like in early December, we're going to be getting the Dark Knight trilogy. So that's Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises on Ultra HD 4K, and also Interstellar coming. So obviously I guess what they're doing is lining up various Nolan movies to tie in with the release of Dunkirk, so we can expect to see Dunkirk hitting Ultra HD Blu-ray as well at the same time, early December, which will be fantastic because that was shot on 65mm film and IMAX cameras and should look absolutely amazing on Ultra HD Blu-ray.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking forward to seeing what the Dark Knight trilogy looks like. And Interstellar again was shot partly on IMAX. So
you know what's going to happen with Dunkirk though?
Aspect ratio changes.
Yeah,
but I just mask it. Sod it.
Yeah,
that's what I did to Transformers.
Yeah.
I should have just turned the projector off for Transformers, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so that's UHD Blu-rays wrapping up. Before we go into Star Wars news, I just wanted to mention a documentary that I've caught 2 episodes of. The final one is tonight at the time of recording, which is Friday, but you'll catch all 3 of them on iPlayer. If you're a music fan of any description, the name Nile Rodgers should mean something to you. It's a 3-part documentary following his life and career, how to make it in the music business. This guy is probably the greatest. He's probably the greatest artist, producer, performer that there has ever been, and singer-songwriter. So if you don't know who Nile Rodgers is, well, Chic, that was his group back in New York in the 70s. They had monster hits. Everything they turned out was a hit, basically. They also produced Sister Sledge and wrote their songs for them. Bowie's Let's Dance album, that was all down to Nile Rodgers. Duran Duran, Reflex and Notorious. One that I didn't know about was Madonna's Like a Virgin album.
No, me neither.
I didn't know about that. Fantastic. And of course, recently his career was relaunched with Daft Punk. So if you've got any interest in music whatsoever, it doesn't matter what style of music you're into, this guy is a genius. And the documentary is so well put together. It's so honest. And it explains everything about the guy's career. It's fantastic. So if you've got the time, get it on iPlayer.
And if we're recommending TV series, it was just available last Friday on Netflix, but worth checking out David Fincher's new series, Mindhunter, which is about the early days of the behavioural science unit in the FBI.
My wife has absolutely adored that.
I caned all 10 episodes in 2 days. It's fantastic. And my only complaint is not long enough. I want more. But it looks absolutely stunning in Dolby Vision. It's beautifully made, brilliant performances. It's absolutely fascinating. I bought the book, actually. I've just bought the book it's based on, because that was so interesting. And I can't recommend it highly enough. Yeah,
that's lined up to go. And of course, if you're listening to this podcast in the week that it goes out, don't forget Friday, 27th, Stranger Things 2. And Steve is gonna binge very quickly.
Cane at early doors.
Overnight. This is how committed he is, and his review will be up on Friday for you to read what Stranger Things. But you don't want to read that. You're just going to go and watch it because, hopefully, fingers crossed. Off work. I will. Thanks very much, Steve. Oh no, we've got a podcast. Yeah, we've got a podcast.
Phil, did you watch this week's air crash investigation?
No, I didn't. Actually, Ed, I no longer have access to Discovery. I got rid of my BT TV. I wasn't watching like you. I wasn't watching the TV, so I got rid of it.
I'll try and find ways and means of getting it to you in some way, shape, or form. It was the most depressing air crash investigation and I know that's setting quite an interesting bar, but suffice to say, mechanical failures leading to cause of accident 0, crew-based failures leading to cause of accident total. Ultimately they'd have done a better job rounding 3 people out of the terminal and kicking them into the cockpit of the plane. It was like bloody hell. There's another episode from years ago.
What airline were we talking about, by the way?
An Argentinian one. No longer exists. There was an episode from years ago where a Swiss pilot stacked it into the side of a mountain because he was crap, and I thought, well, they're never going to top that one. But they've searched through the annals of air crash, and they found something, and you literally watch it going, oh my god, and it's like bloody hell. So yeah, that was quite something, because otherwise it's been a bit up, as we have pointed out, through no. It's not a bad thing that we have fewer air crashes to choose from, but quality's been a little bit variable. But this one was really quite something in terms of how not to fly a plane. It was really quite impressive.
Okay, so there you go. There's some recommendations for TV for you to watch this week. And again, don't forget Stranger Things 2 on Friday. That should be, and of course it's is it 8 episodes this time or 10 episodes, Steve?
Actually, don't know how many it is. I hope it's 8, because that's kind of nice. You can hammer through that in a day quite easily.
yeah, you can. Anyway, so that's coming up. So Star Wars news, as we promised. I mean, you can switch off now if you want. Actually, there's some big stuff to talk about here, so we're not going to be too long on this. But yeah, the Last Jedi trailer, it dropped last week, and what a hassle I had trying to get tickets, Steve. And we've now figured out why I couldn't use my Limitless card to order tickets, and that's because my year was up in October. It was up in August, and I move on to a rolling contract now. So you're still in your first year.
Yes.
So you were able to get your tickets on your Limitless card because you're in the first year. Because it was a rolling contract, it doesn't let you book tickets more than a month in advance. So anybody with a Limitless card that was into their second or third year of their contract could not order. And Facebook and Twitter and so on, it was hilarious of the number of people. And of course, it looked like they were restricting Limitless so they could sell tickets and get money in. That's what it looked like. So it didn't look good for Odeon at all. Their customer service, obviously inundated, but come on, guys, your customer service was terrible. Absolutely terrible. You only had to say what the issue was and that it was being resolved, and people would have cut you a lot of slack. The fact that the first reply was full of puns, which was we've seen a galactic size of interest in the Force will be with you and all the rest of it. In your reply, it made them sound like dicks. It really did. It did not go down well with people. And you could see that right across social media. So if you want an example of how not to handle a problem, then look at how Odeon handled that, because it was terrible. And like I say, all they had to say was, we know this is an issue, we're sorting it out, and we're really sorry. And they did the right thing in the end, but it was a day late, and a lot of people missed the screenings that they wanted to go and see. I wanted to go and see the double bill. I couldn't book it, and I wasn't going to pay for it. In the end, I had to pay for my ticket, but they did refund it eventually. But what a hassle! And it was all because
I'm seeing it twice in one day.
I am now. Yes, I'm seeing the midnight showing, and I've seen it again at 4:30 in the afternoon on the same day. And that was me that wasn't interested.
Yeah, there's just no saving you people.
Yeah, I know.
What do you mean, you people? I know.
But yeah, I've gone from having no interest in Star Wars at all to oh my god, I have to see this, because the trailer. If you don't want any spoilers, and there's a lot of misdirection going on, because they wouldn't put what they've put in the trailers if there wasn't. But there's a lot of misdirection going on. But even still, if you want to go and see it without knowing absolutely anything, do not watch the trailer, is what I'd say, because there's quite a few reveals in there. Even though there's a lot of misdirection going on, there's still a lot of reveals in there. So don't watch the trailer if you don't want any spoilers. But yeah, booked in to see it, so I'm going to see it twice on opening day, and probably see it again in IMAX, knowing me. But I'm disappointed I missed the double bill, because I thought that would have been a great evening. It started at 9 o'clock with Force Awakens, and then from midnight into the new one.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But yeah, sadly I missed on that, and I wasn't going to drop the 20 odd quid it was going to cost to for that, not knowing I was going to get it back, because just the principle of spending £18 a month on a limitless card and not being able to use it, I was not in the right frame of mind that day. I can tell you, and if you look at my Twitter, you can see.
Yes, it's strange that I understand the reason for the problem, but I still think it's weird, because that certainly wasn't the issue when I had a Cineworld Unlimited card.
No,
I could happily book in advance, even though I'd had the card for a couple of years.
And the thing is, what annoyed me the most is that they knew this problem. They knew that Star Wars was being released, the tickets were being released. They knew the problem existed, and they did nothing to fix it. Yeah. And in the end, what they did was they gave you a code, which basically allowed you to book the tickets for free using the code. So you still couldn't use your limitless card. So that's pretty poor. Hopefully they'll get that sorted out.
But I've got to say, yes, like you, I went from being not that bothered to being quite excited again after watching the trailer, which I'm like I said before, I do think Rian Johnson's an interesting filmmaker, a good filmmaker, good film writer. I'm hoping that he's going to do something more original and different this time around than was done on The Force Awakens. And let's be honest, there's a lot riding on this, because it's been mostly bad news, and we're going to come back to some more in a minute.
Well, you see, you're saying this, you want it to be original and all the rest of it, but you just have to look at what they've called the next Star Wars story movie to see that there is no originality and there's no thinking. And
well, that's the problem, yeah.
Kennedy and Co are playing it so safe, and they've gone with Solo, a Star Wars story. How unimaginative a title.
That's possibly the worst title I've ever heard.
Yeah, they could have called it Flying Solo or Going Solo.
They could have just said young Han Solo wins the Millennium Falcon in a bet and does the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, a Star Wars story, and meets Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca. Well, I mean, it's just like, is that the best you could come up with?
Yeah, well, you just
seriously,
you just know that is the story.
But there's too much money at stake for risks to be taken. You know, something that is this universally loved, it's become a sacred cow, and no one can take any risks anymore.
I think the fact that I'm going to predict this now, because I'm a genius, Solo, a Star Wars story, is going to bomb. It's going to be the first Star Wars film where the fans are really going to turn against it.
Now, how does that work? Does that mean you're only going to watch it 4 times?
This is
my problem. You know full well, sat here on the 20th of October, that pretty much regardless of what they do, you're going to watch it. And that repeated thousands and thousands and thousands of times across the planet means that really it could be anything. They could do it with stickmen or...
I'm not saying they're not going to make money, Ed. what I'm saying is you will see a backlash like you saw for the Phantom Menace on this one. If it's a flop, if it doesn't play right, if it's not what the fans expect, and if it's just pandering to the masses, then you will see a backlash on this one. You'll see a backlash if The Last Jedi is the same. If it's played too safe, if it panders too much, you'll see the same backlash. I think fans are at that point now where they're starting to lose interest, and if it's not done, there's no risks taken, and it's not done the way that fans think it should be, there will be a backlash. You'll see it. You saw it with the Phantom Menace. It made a lot of money, but the backlash was there, and the backlash still hasn't gone.
Yeah, I mean,
let's see how we go.
The thing is, and we've said this before, but the whole point of these standalone films was the idea of doing something a bit different, and they just, Rogue One turned out to be an absolute prequel to Star Wars. I quite liked that. I enjoyed the film, and I liked the aesthetic of it, but it was a definite prequel. I don't think is anyone interested in a young Han Solo movie? Apart from anything else, Han Solo is Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford is Han Solo. I've got absolutely no interest in seeing anybody else play the character but Harrison Ford. And I don't really care about his backstory because I don't want to know. I had a slight interest when Lord and Miller were directing it because I thought, okay, these guys are talented and funny. And if they can do a different kind of movie and make it more overtly comedic, that might be an interesting take on Star Wars.
A la Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly. The idea of a Ron Howard Han Solo movie, no offense to Ron Howard, he's a very nice man and he's a competent filmmaker, and I love Apollo 13. I think it's a great film, but he's a journeyman. They brought him in, he's a safe pair of hands. He's obviously pretty much reshot, or at least shot more than 50% of it again, so he gets directorial credit. It's obviously going to cost him a staggering amount of money to make this film. And they've got to get it produced and in cinemas by May, which is going to be a hell of a job because he's only just finished production. But I have no interest at all now. Just none. I don't care for monkeys. Yeah. I will go and see it, mostly out of curiosity. And then the whole thing will start like, well, how much of it was shot by Lord and Miller? What scenes were done? What was changed? What happened to characters that were dropped? What do they bring in? It's going to become picking over the carcass exercise, as happened quite a bit to Rogue One after it came out.
Yeah. You see, the thing for me, again, and you pointed at this, Steve, is that you don't need to know all the backstory of things. Blade Runner 2049 is a good example. There are clues and hints within the film to tell you what has happened over the last 30 years, but we don't need to see it. No. You just need to be told that certain things happened over the last 30 years for them to be at the point that they are at. In Star Wars, the Kessel Run, all the rest of it, Chewie and how he won the Falcon and so on. These were things that were said to give it a little bit of backstory within the original films, but we don't need to know any of the rest of it. We really don't need to know it. We don't need that story to be told. And I think, when you look at certain prequel movies and so on, there's a thing that says, is there any need for a prequel? Was there any need for Rogue One? Yes, it was a good film and we enjoyed it at the time, and I still think it stands up quite well, but it is a sequel to when the original film. Did it really need to exist? Or could we have looked at something else? And the fact that they're even talking about a Yoda movie and an Obi-Wan movie and Boba Fett movie and all this.
And the Man on Yavin 4 movie.
That's the film I want to see.
Yeah.
That's the film I want to see.
It's taken it too far. Yeah, absolutely. And but like you say, there's too much money involved. There's too much money invested. Look at the Star Wars worlds that they're building in LA and in Florida. That's going to rake it in for Disney as well. Look at the money that they've raked in so far. They're not going to take chances. Even if the fans got up and started complaining, in Disney's eyes, it's only people in their 30s and 40s, and what do they care about them? They're aiming it at the kids. The next generations that are coming through. That's where the money is. It's not with the 40-year-olds.
No, true. I think if you want to see original Star Wars content, you need to look at the books, because there is a book coming out which does sound really. I might get it. I don't normally buy Star Wars books, but it's called From a Certain Point of View, and it's a series of stories where they do take a different approach to the Star Wars universe. So, for example, one of the stories is about in Star Wars when they go into the bar and the guy says they're not allowed in here, no droids. It's about the barman and why he doesn't like droids. And that kind of thing I'd be up for. Yeah, okay, that sounds fun.
Well, I've said it before. I really want a film about the Cantina Band in the style of Whiplash.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, how they only come to play one song, but really tight. That is their tempo.
Yeah.
So no, it's one of those things. I am one step removed from you guys on this. I am a huge fan of the franchise. There are in parts of it which are, just as important to me, but I am, as I say, I'm just one step further back. So it's one of those things. Well, sort of, yeah. What did you expect? It's like it's a tenuous comparison, but it's one I think stands up a bit. It's people who support Premier League football teams now annoyed that it's all about the money. It's like, well, duh. You weren't complaining when it started. It's now you're along for the ride now, whether you like it or not. So there is an element beyond your control. And my problem to say problem is the wrong word. I have a slight sense of exasperation when it's like, oh, I think it's going to be crap, but I'll still go and watch it. Your only recourse is to not watch it. It's the same at the moment. There's some. It's a shame Mr. Botright isn't here because he will undoubtedly know more about this than I. But there is a level of frustration with electronic arts amongst the gaming fraternity, and it would appear that for the first time in a very long time, it's not a case of, oh, I'm very annoyed with this, I'm only going to grudgingly buy it. It would appear that something is due for release imminently, and swathes of people, massive chunks of the would-be buying audience have gone, do you know what? There is the money back for my pre-order. I'm not interested until you stop treating us like cash cows. So I'm afraid the only way you can recover your childhood franchise is to let go. And maybe that's the white spirit talking, I don't know, but that is where it seems to be from my perspective.
And on that bombshell, that's it for the AVForums podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
This mortal form has grown weak. I need substance.
And Ed Selley.
Whoa, does he need CPR? Because I totally know CPR.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course leave us your 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.